Story 1. I decided to stop dating and quit for 2 years. My last relationship before meeting my current partner was with a guy who, when we broke up, kept a tote bag that had a lot of sentimental value to me. It was from the Strand bookstore, and I bought it on my first trip to New York City. I left it at his house, and he didn't even try to give it back. I told my current partner about this on one of our early dates while discussing our exes. 7 months later, for Christmas, he got me a Strand tote bag. I hadn't mentioned it again after that date, and he remembered. He said, "I couldn't find one like you described, so I got you one with cats on it." I'm a total cat person. I started crying when I opened it. Nobody else I've ever dated has been so thoughtful. He set the standard, and I hope we never break up. Story 2. She listened to me and took an interest in everything I had to say or share. There's no way she was always interested, but she was excited and engaged because I was. She took candid pictures of me and my son and was completely fine with me needing alone time while she did her own thing. She built on anything I wanted to do. For example, I said, "I want to watch a movie. Let's let my son pick the movie and get his favorite snacks." She responded, "Okay, let's also build a fort. I'll grab all the blankets and pillows in the house." She bought things my son liked and talked to him, built things out of Lego, and played Beyblades with childlike enthusiasm. She listened to him talk about his interests with a smile in her eyes. She was amazing. I was working a lot, and anyone with a shared custody schedule and a full-time job knows that finding quality time with your child during the week can be difficult. My son wanted to have a pillow fight desperately. I was used to being alone. One time, she was over, and I made dinner and started cleaning up. She stopped me and said, "Go have a pillow fight with your son. I can clean up." It was difficult for me to let someone else take over, but I did it. I still have the videos she recorded of me and my son having that pillow fight after she did the dishes. I could express my frustrations about something she did, and she respected my feelings. Eventually, we would calmly talk through issues when emotions ran high, which was almost never. She could also communicate when she was upset or frustrated without yelling, guilt trips, passive aggressiveness, or holding grudges. If she needed a moment during a disagreement, she could walk away and communicate effectively. She set healthy boundaries and had her own friends, hobbies, and interests that she would share and involve me in when she wanted. I had never been in a relationship like that before nor since. Despite her horrific past, she effortlessly showed me what a healthy relationship could be and that trauma does not always manifest negatively. Sometimes people take their awful experiences and the ugliness they endured and transform it. They become vessels for good and make the world better. I say small because I don't believe what she did was a grand effort or pious display. What she did was significant, but she did it without effort or intent. It has taken a long time to realize the impact she had on me, and I won't settle for anyone who doesn't make this world a better place just by being themselves. Story 3. She made a list of the things I told her that I love to do and planned out dates accordingly. Unfortunately, she ended up cheating on me, so all that effort was wasted. Story 4. Transparency. He shared everything he was up to without a filter and without me having to ask. At first, I found it amusing, but then I developed a lot of respect for that. Now, I can't handle the mysterious type. Story 5. After my partner and I had been dating for less than a month, I left for a 2-week international vacation. I wasn't sure if he would stick around or not, considering my past experiences and how new the relationship was. However, he texted me several times a day and even kept track of the time differences. I sent him photos of some beautiful wildflowers I saw, and when I got home, there was one sitting in a pot on my doorstep. Story 6. If they care, they will make time for you, no matter how busy they are. If they don't, and you constantly have to chase after them to spend time together, then they don't care enough to prioritize that relationship. This is true for any type of relationship, including friendship and family. Story 7. He drove me home. I would go out of town to meet him, and each time he would drive me back the following morning. I think those conversations during the quiet drive home are the ones I love most. Story 8. One of my friends, who had never met my cats before, could tell me which one was meowing in the background while we were on the phone. It made me realize that someone who pays attention to my pets makes me feel cared for. Story 9. When my future husband lived in the same city as my mom and I lived an hour and a half away, he visited her apartment and talked with her for 4 hours because I thought she might do something irreversible. He passed away and I will never date again. This is why. Story 10. I dated someone who listened to the little things. I mentioned that I used to love driving around with my mom to see Christmas lights and how my exes in the past didn't want to do that with me because it was boring. Well, this guy remembered that conversation and took me out to see Christmas lights a few months later. It was great. Even though it didn't work out between us, I still think he's a great person, and I hope he's found someone just as nice as he is. My husband now takes me to see Christmas lights with our 3 kids every holiday season. Story 11. I have been out of the dating world for decades now, but I wanted to express my gratitude to the original poster for a new and thoughtful question. It brought out some really interesting responses, both positive and negative experiences. It is a real gem, especially when so much on this subreddit consists of the same few questions recycled repeatedly. Story 12. So I was sexually assaulted on a first date. On another occasion, a guy picked me up and asked if I performed oral sex well. That's my dating history. Without knowing this, my now husband asked me on a first date to breakfast at a diner. It was precious to me. It wasn't a late night, questionable encounter. It was sweet and intentional. Update. It's a random Friday, and we just dropped the kids off at school, and he randomly wanted to go to the same diner. Story 13. I joined a dating site many years ago, not a hookup site like Tinder. I went on 3 dates with 3 different people, nothing serious, just meeting for coffee and chatting to get to know each other in person. 2 of them, within 30 minutes, told me they wanted to leave and go home with me, and one of them said they really needed cash but was willing to do whatever if I gave it to them. What changed for me is that I have never gone anywhere near dating sites again. Story 14. Let me know when he was particularly busy and couldn't text much during the day. I had told him earlier that I didn't like being ignored, and texting was important to me. Story 15. When I was a child, my dad would sometimes open the car door for me and would always say, "Someday, a nice boy will do this for you too." On our first date, my now husband did that and still does so randomly just because. It's a simple gesture that may mean nothing on its own, but, combined with the many other kind things he does, serves as one of the many signs of someone who is genuinely kind and thoughtful and who truly wants to help. What my dad really taught me was to look for the small kind gestures that indicate someone will be a great partner. Story 16. Being interested in the same topics is very important to me in dating. I have dated many attractive girls, but we had nothing in common. Those relationships failed because we never found activities we both enjoyed. Story 17. My current boyfriend and I were drinking wine on one of our first dates. I accidentally spilled wine on my pants and on his bed. He kindly gave me a pair of sweatpants to change into and put mine in his washing machine. It was a simple gesture, but it was completely different from my previous relationship. When the same thing happened with my ex, he became extremely angry and yelled at me for trying to clean my dress to prevent a stain. It was a strange experience. Story 18. He invited me over for dinner, and I noticed his bathroom had pads under the sink. When I asked, he said his sister sometimes visits, and he likes to make sure she is comfortable. That level of thoughtfulness became my new baseline. Story 19. When I discovered something from his past, it triggered my complex post-traumatic stress disorder from a previous abusive relationship. I was scared to communicate to him why I was sobbing endlessly in fear of being abandoned or overreacting. Instead of getting annoyed or frustrated with me for having emotions, he sat on FaceTime for 4 hours and held space for me to be upset and cry. He didn't pressure me to tell him what was wrong or to stop crying. He patiently waited for me to calm down and assured me that if I wanted to share, he would be there for me. I adore him endlessly and never imagined a man would treat me this way. He shows me every day how I should be treated, considered, and cared for. I will never settle for less than this again, and I hope I don't even have to worry about that because I know I found a keeper. Story 20. Called me every day just to ask how my day was. I was a bit intimidated by it at first, thinking I was being love-bombed. But now we are planning our wedding. Story 21. My girlfriend is very skilled. I truly appreciate that she is a fixer. I don't want to be with someone who can't teach me how to sew and solder. I hope I never have to find anyone else to meet my new standards. Story 22. I asked if he could do me a small favor. He responded, "What is it, love? Can you bring me my chapstick?" And he did it happily, without any begrudging tone. No sigh, no eye roll, and no questions. He just did it. I cried. Someone was genuinely willing to help me. I don't know if it's a new standard, but it certainly made me feel seen. Story 23. There are many things that make me appreciate my relationship with my boyfriend, but there are especially two differences. I feel like I am in an equal relationship now, instead of being part of someone's life while they do not care about being part of mine. He also cares that I enjoy myself during intimacy. I was used to it being only about pleasuring the man and putting up with things I did not want to do. Story 24. I had to witness my best friend date a guy who pressured her into cutting me and many of her other friends off. This man threatened to hurt me if I said hello to her again. Because of that experience, I will not date a woman who forces me to cut off any of my friends, regardless of gender. Especially since my closest friend now is a different woman. This doesn't seem small, but I thought it was at the time, even though I'm horrified thinking about it now. Story 25. He tells me he is proud of me, even for little things like new hobbies. He brings me candy sometimes if he goes to the store, which shows that he thinks of me when I am not around, and I really love that. He watches and listens to things with me that he has no interest in when I am not feeling my best, knowing I just need some comfort content. He is even engaged in the content, which is more than he needs to do. He really knows how to show that he cares and values me as a person. I have an ex who cheated, gaslit, and manipulated me, and I have another ex who acted like I was overly clingy to the point where I started feeling crazy and wouldn't text him out of fear of annoying him. He also never wanted me to meet his family. It is strange the things you put up with because you just do not know any better yet. Story 26. I am in a long-distance relationship with a 5.5-hour time difference, and he is ahead. He stays up all night just to talk to me and never seriously complains about it, only jokingly. He is extremely thoughtful with small gestures, like buying me food, and grand ones, like surprising me with a fireworks show. I was speechless. He keeps a list of my favorite songs and updates it regularly. He is never pushy about anything, including intimate moments. The list goes on. He has raised my standards significantly, and I am still in shock that a person could be that amazing, even after 1.5 years of dating. Story 27. He would pick up bits of information from our conversations, like, "I don't know why my charger is acting up," or "My laptop has been lagging lately," or "I need to buy new batteries for my mouse." Next thing I know, and oftentimes I have already forgotten about these things, he is giving me a new and thoroughly upgraded charger. He has bought new RAM for my laptop and installed it, or he has replaced the batteries in my mouse. Coming from a previous long-term relationship where I felt like I always had to be the responsible and more mature one who had to take care of him, it feels really good to be the one being taken care of. Story 28. Providing peace versus confusion. I have been surrounded by chaotic, pushy, and indecisive men throughout my adult life and became accustomed to it to the point where I both expected it and adopted some of those traits. Then I met a man in a bar and was instantly uninterested. He was chivalrous, respectful, asked many questions about me, and genuinely engaged with my responses. He even asked my permission to move closer to me. Afterward, he made time to talk to me on his busiest days and made plans to meet his friends. I was not attracted to it. Where was the constant talk about himself and his interests, the conversations with other women as soon as I was out of earshot, the pressure for intimacy, the arrogance I was so accustomed to? It actually took months for me to accept that I could sit on the couch, lay my head against his chest, and feel completely safe and comfortable. No second guessing, no wondering where we stood. A new standard has been set forever. Story 29. I had one girlfriend in high school who would give me handwritten notes with perfume sprayed on them, and I liked that a lot. Story 30. If she only wants to act like we are a couple in private and I can go days at a time being left on read, message received, I will go my own way. Story 31. Once you've been with a partner who isn't constantly moody and insecure, there's no going back to one who is. Story 32. Did not describe my intellectual and scholarly pursuits in air quotes as big words or nerdy. Respected them as an integral part of me. Story 33. Having no political conviction, we didn't break up that night after our argument. However, 2 months later, I realized I cannot date someone who lacks strong values they are willing to stand behind, whether political or otherwise. A lack of political awareness is an immediate deal breaker for me. Story 34. He just wouldn't buy me gifts or flowers. I like getting flowers. If you were going to stop at Walmart to get a six-pack before coming over, please grab a $5 bouquet to make me happy. Story 35. I really like jelly beans. One time, a girl I was interested in showed up with a few friends. She didn't know I would be there, and when she saw me, she rummaged through her handbag, pulled out a bag of jelly beans, and gave them to me. She said she saw them a few days ago and thought of me. I had never experienced that before. Story 36. My dad would sit in my car to warm it up at 7 a.m. so I wouldn't be cold in the morning. He also makes sure to hold doors for me, walks on the outside of the sidewalk, buys me my favorite foods, picks the meat out of any food since I'm a vegetarian, and buys me little treats. He treats me well, and I can't imagine dating someone who wouldn't do those things for me. Story 37. He brings me flowers every time we go out. There is no flower shop near his office, so he drives 15 minutes in the opposite direction to get them. I sometimes tell him he doesn't need to go, as it is okay to show up without flowers. He responds by asking how I would know he truly wants to see me. I loved the first time it happened because I had casually mentioned my love for flowers, and he remembered. My ex never did that. I asked too many times and posted too many stories, but I was always told I would get flowers next time, and next time never came in 2.5 years. I am very happy now. Story 38. What do you mean you have no time to talk during the day about my ex? My ex had another person around and still sent me a good night text. So yes, that person must not be avoidant. Story 39. I can be a little airhead at times, and he paid for my food without me realizing it at first on our first date. I wondered where the check was, and he said he had already paid. I thought it was so cute. Story 40. It wasn't necessarily a relationship. We didn't make it past the talking stage. However, something that opened my eyes was that I recently went through a lot. My dad died, and then my long-term girlfriend broke up with me. She came over, and I forget what it was about, but I was stressed and complaining about something. I started to apologize for complaining, and she stopped me, hugged me, and told me my feelings were valid. She acknowledged that I had been through a lot and how strong she thought I was. I'm human and allowed to feel annoyed and experience emotions. Story 41. During a casual conversation, I mentioned something minor about my day. A week later, they brought it up again, remembering the details and asking about it. That level of attentiveness made me realize that true connection isn't about grand gestures but about feeling seen and heard. Since then, I have prioritized partners who actively listen and engage, rather than just go through the motions of a conversation. Story 42. My cat Dexter and my girlfriend Krista didn't get along. Dexter would hide around corners and leap out at her, claws extended. Krista had an emotional response to his dislike of her. She tried to win him over, but without success. One day she snapped. Dexter was doing his usual antics, and she lost it. She cried, screamed, and was so upset with him that she locked him in the basement and collapsed in front of the door. An emotional wreck. It suddenly occurred to me that I had a partner who lacked the skills to be a good mother. If she could be pushed to the edge by a cat, how would she ever manage children? It marked the beginning of the end for us. The experience changed what I looked for in a partner, and it worked out well for me. There's an important conclusion to this story. While Krista broke down on one side of the basement door, Dexter, never one to tolerate indignities lightly, reached his paw out through the gap under the door and repeatedly slashed at her with his claws. Dexter helped me avoid a big mistake, but he was also hilarious. Story 43. He would scream and engage in denial, attack, and reverse victim and offender behavior. During one of those fits, he threw a pillow in my face. I told him that it wasn't okay. He responded by saying it was just a pillow and that I was being dramatic. I'm uncertain about the future of our relationship. In fact, I desperately want financial freedom now. Story 44. Reciprocity. That was one of the first things that made me realize my significant other was different. When we first started spending time together, they took the initiative to invite me out to do things. Before that, I always had to initiate and plan everything with past dates when the intent was clear. With my significant other, there was actual reciprocity, and I think that was what made me realize this could potentially be something more. Story 45. When I was dating my current husband, I asked him to run to the store with my car. He picked up the items I needed and returned my car with a full tank of gas and a fresh wash. He didn't say anything until I noticed. He would also leave for work earlier than I did in the morning and always scrape the snow off my windshield before leaving. There are many reasons I married him, but these were the beginnings of realizing how much I had settled for inappropriate partners in the past. Story 46. They treated waitstaff with genuine kindness and respect. I can't unsee how people behave toward service workers now. It tells me everything I need to know. Story 47. In my last relationship, my ex-boyfriend was very insecure about his appearance and often expressed his feelings to seek sympathy. I'm not saying he wasn't entitled to his insecurities, but his constant implication that he was ugly and the world's ugliest man irritated me. He also frequently called himself fat, despite knowing I was struggling with body image issues. After we broke up, I promised myself never to date a man who puts himself down for compliments. Story 48. In most of my relationships, I had to fight to get my point across. For example, in my last relationship before my wife, I often had arguments because I wanted my partner to acknowledge that their behavior was actively hurting me. That person would respond by saying they didn't know what I was talking about, or they would deflect with comments like, "You did this," or "You're overreacting." This would escalate into a huge fight because they refused to listen to me, causing me to feel gaslit. I ended up being perceived as the bad guy for expressing that my words were being twisted, denied, or disregarded. If I said they seemed distant, I would get yelled at or told it was all in my head, or I would simply be ignored. Then I met my wife and we quickly connected. I discovered that I could express my feelings openly and they would be taken seriously right away. If I said someone bothered me, I received an apology and assurance that she would handle it differently, and then it would be resolved without argument. Just a simple acknowledgement of my feelings. If I mentioned something like they seemed distant in the morning, I would receive an apology, followed by a kiss, a hug, and an explanation. It took me a long time to learn how to de-escalate my mental state because I would often be primed to argue to make my point, but now communication flows smoothly, like first-class expedited shipping with a warranty, no argument required. Story 49. I mentioned that I don't like my water cold, and the next time I came over, his water pitcher was on the counter instead of in the fridge. It has remained there ever since. Story 50. Don't ignore warning signs. I know this should be obvious, but there have been many times I've given people chances only to end up being poorly treated in the end. Story 51. She cheated emotionally through lies and by hiding details. I am now clear about my view and what I consider cheating as a boundary. If a guy proposes he is your soulmate at the first meeting and you take his number while entertaining a friendship with him, I will end our relationship and tell you to choose between his validation and ours. Story 52. He stayed with me during a panic attack and always cared about what was going through my mind. I wasn't very expressive and was not used to so much affection. Story 53. I really appreciated the person who asked for permission to hold my hand and then respected my decision when I said no. The same individual was open to discussing our beliefs and views on politics during the first date. There was no need to waste either of our time. It was a pleasant experience, and I hope he is doing well. Story 54. They simply listened, really listened, and remembered the little things I said. After that, I realized I would never settle for someone who only waits for their turn to talk. Story 55. I had a crush on a guy who gave me a blank stare when I made a joke. Instantly, that killed my feelings for him. He didn't even groan or fake laugh. Indifference is the worst kind of reaction. The people I date don't have to find me funny, but I want my humor to elicit some kind of reaction from them. I'm lucky to have a wonderful fiancée who's as goofy as I am. Story 56. I was having a really bad day, and my temper was ready to explode. She sat me down and made me read a couple of paragraphs from a novel aloud. I swear I've never had anything dispel my anger that quickly. It was remarkable. By the end of the second paragraph, my blood pressure had returned to normal. Story 57. He knew I had issues with being in loud places and asked, before our first date, if I wanted to set up a nonverbal signal to indicate when the bar was getting too noisy for me, so we could leave and find somewhere else to go. I was grateful for his thoughtfulness because it's hard to think straight when I start to feel overwhelmed. No one had ever asked me anything like that before, and I always mention it because even quiet cafe dates can get unexpectedly noisy. He's the first person I've dated who has shown genuine interest in my job as a textile artist. He messaged me the next day with follow-up questions because he was talking to a friend about it and wanted to understand it better. He asked if he could touch my curls instead of just pulling one of the ringlets like so many people feel entitled to do. In between our first and second dates, he listened to an audiobook by my favorite author so he could discuss it with me, despite it being an entirely different genre from the types of books he usually reads. These are just the first things that came to mind. He has truly opened my eyes to how inconsiderate, selfish, and boring a large proportion of men can be. Story 58. He truly always made my life easier. One of my favorite things, however, was when I was on my period. I wasn't feeling great and had bad cramps. He took me to work that day, and when he picked me up, he surprised me with chocolates, flowers, and a heated lobster-shaped pad. I married him. We are going through a divorce now, but I wish him the absolute best. Story 59. Made me realize I'm worth more. I should look after myself. People take advantage if you don't have boundaries and defend the ones you do. Otherwise, you will be taken for granted whether someone means to or not. Story 60. It was a friend of someone I was dating who introduced us. She's just looking to have some fun. And if it turns into something else, that's great. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. I had just come out of a divorce from someone I thought early on was my soulmate. She wasn't. What this woman taught me is that if you approach dating looking for a soulmate, you're doing it wrong. The goal on your first date is to secure a second date. If that doesn't happen, move on. If it does, aim for a third date. If that doesn't happen, move on. If you're on the fourth date and start thinking, this might be the one, then check yourself. Story 61. He listened when I shared my past hurts and made an effort to meet those needs, surpassing any expectations I could have had. This changed my entire perspective, and I am now a much healthier person mentally. We are in a long-term relationship now, and he has set the bar so high. If he asked me to marry him today, I would say yes. Story 62. He put a gun to my forehead when, after 3 weeks of dating, I refused to marry him. I literally dodged a bullet there and decided to stop dating anyone I hadn't known since childhood for years. During that time, I hung out with a friend who was also an on-and-off boyfriend, and we eventually got married. We're still together 50 years later. Story 63. He will go with me anywhere I ask him to, even if he doesn't want to. Whether it is a trip to the corner store, an appointment, an event, a Sunday afternoon drive, a flight to another country, or a 30-hour road trip to a place I want to visit just to turn right back around and drive home. Anywhere I ask him to accompany me, he will always say yes and maintain a good attitude the whole time. It is comforting to have a partner who understands when I don't want to do something alone and will be there with me in those moments, without complaint. My wanderlust has taken us on many wonderful adventures because there is no place that is off limits, and I love him for it. Story 64. She told me about how her previous relationship ended via a breakup text message. A while later, we were testing one another over texts. She made a joke along the lines of, "Are you feeling confident toying with ending your relationship?" with some smileys, so I knew it was a joke. I texted back, I'm sure you wouldn't break up with me over text message, so I'm safe as long as I don't see you. Cue the Hagrid, I should not have said that meme. I apologized and tried to make things right, but she wouldn't listen or let me make her life easier. This remained a sore topic for several weeks, during which she wouldn't see me due to her busy life. When things were supposed to calm down, I began asking her when I would see her again, but she never responded and would change the subject. Eventually, I let her know that I was aware of her avoidance and expressed that I would really like to arrange a date. I received a text that started with, "I don't think a relationship is a great idea at this point," and ended with a list of reasons why, mostly directed at me. I became upset about her breaking up with me via text. She then got very mad, refused to talk or text me, and meeting her was already out of the question. 2 weeks later, I told her, "Look, I've given you all the space you could want, but this is tearing me up. Talk to me." I got a text saying she was still experiencing strong negative feelings towards me. I asked if she wanted to break up, and she did, so we ended things over text because that was the only form of communication she permitted. 2 weeks later, she texted me saying she missed me and wanted to get back together. I was happy to, before all this drama. She was still the sweetest. So we arranged to meet the following Friday evening, both of us being busy. The day before, I texted to confirm we were still on. I had been quiet up until that point because I knew that if I wasn't, I would fall back in love with her at the drop of a hat. And here I am. It's 6:49 p.m. on the Friday of our great reunion, still awaiting confirmation that we're actually meeting. I really hope this changes me. Story 65. He told me to take my time whenever I was running late. His patience was a form of love and kindness that I had not known in any romantic relationship before. We will be married 25 years this fall. Story 66. They texted back consistently. No games, no ghosting, just actual communication. Turns out that's the bare minimum. Story 67. They genuinely apologized when they made a mistake without excuses or deflection. Changed everything for me. Story 68. They never made me feel guilty for expressing my feelings. It turns out that relationships are not supposed to feel like a debate club. Story 69. He truly made my life easier. One of my favorite memories was when I was on my period. I wasn't feeling well and had bad cramps. He took me to work that day, and when he picked me up, he surprised me with chocolates, flowers, and a heating pad. I married him. We are going through a divorce now, but I wish him the best. Story 70. Honestly, when I met the woman who I eventually married and who is now my wife, she had a way of making me feel attractive and desired as a man. Even before we were in a serious relationship, it changed my outlook. I began to see myself as good-looking, handsome, and worthy of that kind of attention. I had never been made to truly feel that way before I met her. Story 71. The last guy I dated before my husband was insecure and immature, and I realized that he embodied everything that was wrong in my past relationships. I told myself to do better, and I met my husband about 6 months later. He is nothing like the ones who came before him, and I found my forever best friend. Story 72. When my ex-boyfriend and I were ordering at a McDonald's, he walked up to the counter, extended his hand with a 5-pound note, and said, "Small fries." There was no please or thank you, just the words "small fries." Later, we had an argument because he refused to put his trash in the bin and intended to leave it on the table. I told him he was rude to the person at the counter and was being rude by not cleaning up his mess. He replied, "It's their job to take orders and clean." I was put off by him ever since. Story 73. My boyfriend always opens the car door for me and asks, "What are you doing?" If I try to open it myself. It makes me feel like a little princess when he opens the door and offers me his hand to help me out. It's a small gesture, but it means a lot to me. Story 74. He does all the little mundane things with me without me even asking. If I say I am running to the grocery store, he responds, "Okay, let me grab my shoes." During shopping trips, he asks, "Oh, what are we going to look at?" It feels as if he genuinely enjoys my company and wants to spend time with me. Story 75. A small gesture that changed my dating standards forever was when someone actually listened and remembered the little things I mentioned, like my favorite coffee or a book I wanted to read. It made me realize how important it is to feel truly seen and appreciated in a relationship, even for the smallest details. Story 76. Someone I know started dating someone who is illiterate. I now have don't be illiterate as a minimum standard. Story 77. Most of what I learned as standard was from behavior I realized I would never tolerate again. If I do not feel valued, they can fade away. I will not be accessible anymore. Story 78. I worked all weekend in the cold. My long-distance boyfriend drove 2 hours to pick me up and brought me homemade lasagna, my favorite, just to spend 1 hour with me before I passed out from fatigue. He drove back home the next morning. 16 years later, I am married to him. I have no idea how I could have dated anyone else after that, and he continues to meet the standard. Story 79. She was loving and kind, and she welcomed me into her life. She entrusted me with her German shepherd named Love, and with her heart. I let her down. That was the day I realized I am not mature enough or strong enough for love. So I have returned to a celibate life. She was a one-of-a-kind woman. I know I will never meet another like her again. Story 80. My first serious girlfriend, to whom I lost my virginity, cheated on me. She never admitted it, but because we lived in a small town, I knew. I didn't have sex again until I got married. Story 81. I think that was when he started showing little signs. He always accompanies me to the door of my house, calms me down when I am having a crisis, becomes my support, and buys me chocolate when I am experiencing premenstrual syndrome. Before him, I was never truly loved or valued. Story 82. They had relations with an ex 10 days into our dating, but we were not exclusive yet. The key takeaway is probably setting boundaries and expectations early. Story 83. They were excited when I gave them a gift and were proud to share it everywhere. I have never seen them so happy. Story 84. They supported me and respected what I had to say when I was dealing with mental health issues. I had a previous partner who ended the relationship over similar problems, which affected me significantly for a while. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.